The arrivals terminaal met visits familiaartjes rond suitcases rutling overtel flyers. Loudspeaker urnaornsmans echoing alweer apologies for delayed flights. Children crying. Couples reuniting in cheerful embraces. The air smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air. The scent of endings and beginnings colliding in a single place. Ethan Caldwell stood near a small coffee kiosk. Shifting cages went from one foot to the other, a bouquet of red tropical flowers clutched in his hand. Исчез рентером deliberately orange birds of paradise, vivid pink hibiscus, something bold, something that said I miss you eat or 2 words. 10 days. That was all Lauren had been gone. 10 days on her first girls trip since their wedding 7 years ago. He had encouraged her to insist. Really. Packed her sunscreen. Tis her about overloading her suitcase. Kiss her goodbye with a smile that masked the small ache of separation. You deserve this, it told her. You will spend years holding everything together. And she had, through HS promotions, HS long hours, the fertility appointments that always ended the same way. Lauren had been steady, loyal, HS constant. The sliding glass doors opened again. Ethan straightened automatically. There she was. Lauren emerged there from the crowd, her skin sunky set and glowing, her dark hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. She looked guilty, almost radiant, but something in her posture made which is stomach tighten. Her shoulders were tense. Her gaze darted across the terminal and 10, when it landed on him, precariously almost immediately. Still, she smiled. He moved toward her, flowers outstretched. Welcome home, Nick. She left softly, accepting the arm, but her arms wrapped round him a bit too late. The hug was brief, politimor obligation 10 longing. IT startled him. Ethan told himself not to overthink IT. Airports were strong places. Travel exhaustion did that things to people. You look amazing, he said. Some Bernhardt's exhaustion, she replied quickly, too quickly. He carried her overseas suitcase to the car while she walked ahead, phone already in her hand, typing furiously. In the parking garage, the concrete swallowed their footsteps, amplifying the silence between them. How was it? He asked as he loaded the trunk. Amazing, relaxing, exactly what I needed, Lauren said, the words stumbling over each other as she were racing herself. On the drive home, she talked constantly. Beaches, resort spas, cocktails with umbrellas, a catamaran ride at sunset. The stories came out smooth, polished too smooth, like lines rehearsed in advance. Ethan nodded, smiled, asked questions, but something in her tone felt stagnant. 3 weeks passed. On the surface, life resumed its shape. Work days, dinners, shared errands. But beneath it all, a quiet tension stretched tighter with each passing day. Lauren spent longer in the bedroom. Her phone never left her side. When Ethan touched her, really touched her, she flinched, then covered it with a false smile. I'm just tired, she said. Jet lag, he told himself. Adjustment. It had been a big trip. Then came the morning that shattered everything. Ethan was in the kitchen, the smell of freshly ground coffee filling the air, when a sharp, violent sound cut through the house. Gagging, he dropped the book and ran upstairs. The bedroom door was half open. Lauren knelt over the toilet, pale, trembling, tears streaking down her face. He said, rushing forward, pulling her hair back gently. Food poisoning. She shook her head. I need to tell you something, too. The words landed heavier than any scream. They sat on the cold tile floor, backs against the bathtub. The room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Lauren twisted her hands in her lap, nails digging into her palms. She didn't look at him. Impregnante. For 3 seconds, yet hands word exploded into light. Hope surged so fast that it stole Uchi's breath. Years of disappointment, invasive tests, doctors' sympathetic looks all of it vanished under the weight of that single word. Then reality crashed down just as violently. They had treated 4 years. 7 years. 3 fertility specialists. Endless blood draws. A diagnosis delivered with brutal clinical precision, catastrophical sperm count. The chances of natural conception were, as one doctor put it, virtually impossible to. However, Ethan whispered, Laurens explanation unrevealed in a rush of panic. A miracle, she said. That's what the doctor said. A animally on chance. I was drinking on the trip. Maybe that later my stress. Maybe that's what my body needed. I don't know. She talked in circles. Her was climbing higher with each excuse. Ethan said nothing. EJ's mind did the math with mere serious clarity. 10 days in Jamaica. 3 weeks since her return. Early pregnancy symptoms. The timeline fit too perfectly. I need air, he said suddenly, standing. He drove 4 hours without direction, finally stopping at the beach where he had their first date. The ocean stretched endlessly before him, indifferent and eternal. 7 years. 7 years of trust. That night, he slept in the guest room. The next morning, he called in sick for the first time in 5 years and went to a private laboratory. The technician, a woman with kind eyes and a voice obtained BY experience, explains an invasive prenatal paternity test. You need a blood sample from the mother, she said, and one from you. Results in 7 to 10 business days. Should I yes and no? Ethan admitted quietly. The woman nodded. You're not the first. Getting Laurens sample was easier than he expected. He told her his doctor wanted hormone levels checked. She went to willingly, trusting, grateful. The wait was torture. Every day felt like drowning slowly. Then the email arrived. Probability of paternity, 0%. Not unlikely. Impossible. Ethan closed the laptop with care, as if sudden movement might shatter what remained of him. Someone else's child. Someone she met while he watered her plants and missed her. The house felt different now, like a set built round a lie. When Lauren came home with Thai food that evening, smiling like nothing had changed there. Something inside Ethan went cold. He didn't confront her. He didn't scream. He began to plan. 0%. Ethan Caldwell learned something fundamental about himself in the days after the test results arrived there. Grief didn't always announce itself with tears or raids. Sometimes it arrived there quietly, like frost creeping over glass, numbing everything he touched. He became methodical. The night he read the words probability of paternity, 0%, he didn't confront Lauren. He didn't ask questions he already knew the answers to. He closed the laptop with deliberate care, stood, and walked through the house as if he were seeing it for the first time. The framed wedding photo in the hall, Lauren laughing, he'd thrown back, with his arm wrapped round her waist. The couch where she had spent Sunday mornings drinking coffee and planning a future that now belonged there to someone else. The spare bedroom where it slept the night before, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe through the wall. Everything felt stagnant now, perhaps in a place that had fooled him for 7 years. Lauren came home later than usual that evening, humming a champagne card containers in the kitchen. Her sweater hung loose, but it noticed a faint care beneath it, the earliest hint of a body changing around a secret. How was your day? She asked brightly. Productive? He said. The word tasted strongly in which is my word. He watched her move familiar gestures, the way she tucked her behind her ear, the way she leaned against the counter when she talked. It was surreal how normal she looked, how easily she slipped into the role of loving wife while carrying proof of betrayal inside her. I need to head out, he did, already reaching for his keys. Client emergency. Ah, she said, disappointment flickering across her face before she messed it. Okay, dying to wait up to. He didn't go to a client. He drove to a hotel across town, checked in Andrich's name, and closed the door on a room that smelled like industrial cleaner and anonymity. There, sitting on the edge of the bed, the weight of a tea finally settled. The betrayal. The familiar turn. The future that he did quietly while he was busy believing in a tea. Ethan pressed his palms into his face, but the tears wouldn't come. What came instead was something colder, sharper. Resolve. The next 2 weeks unfolded with surgical precision. Ethan consulted a divorce attorney, one who specialized in infidelity cases. The man listened carefully, asked questions without judgment, and laid out Ethan's options with blunt honesty. Document everything, he said. Say nothing until you're ready to. Ethan followed every instruction. He obtained a new bank account at a different institution and began transferring each share of their savings in small, unremarkable little amounts. He found a furnished apartment 2 streets small, clean, earned 100% paid 6 months rent in cash. He documented everything. Lauren's text messages with for travel components. Credit card statements showing их pensive dinners and resort charges. The paternity test results. The turnip photograph had ITO, building an air ticket case. The hardest part was pretending. Ethan woke up every morning and went through the motions. Breakfast at the table. Political conversation. Not sent murmurs of encouragement when Lauren talked about Duster's appointments, baby names, plans for the future she was stealing from him. Each interaction felt like so ringless. Lauren, meanwhile, seemed relieved by this apparent acceptance. Her guilt manifested as excessive affection, hence lingering too long, smiles too wide. She cared against him on the couch one evening, her hand resting on her graying belly. I know this isn't how we planned it, she said so swiftly. But maybe it's better this way. No more treatments. No more disappointment. Just a sent our miracle to. Our miracle. Ethan nearly left. Instead, he kissed her forehead and said nothing. He chose the date of which is departure carefully. Their 7th anniversary. Poetic, he thought. While Lauren planned a romantic dinner, Ethan packed her sensual belongings into boxes and stored them at each's new apartment during work trips. He forwarded each's mail, updated emergency contacts, erased himself quietly, methodically. The night before he left, Ethan lay away beside her, studying her face in the moonlight. He searched for the woman he had married, the one he had trusted completely. He thought and find her. Maybe she'd never existed. Maybe she had always been capable of this, and had simply never given her the opportunity. At dawn, he rose silently. He dressed and clothes hidden in each's car and placed 2 items on the kitchen counter, which is wedding ring and a sealed envelope. Inside, it written only the truth. I know everything. The paternity test confirmed what you already know. I won't raise her, not a man's child. I won't be your safety net. Don't look for me. My attorney will contact you regarding the divorce. You made your choice in Jamaica. Now live with IT. He took one last look at the house he had bought together and walked out into the cold morning air. Lauren screamed when she found the letter, probably woke the neighbors. Ethan didn't hear IT. He was already 3 hours away, driving through the town with the radio of Vantage's phone powered down. The silence felt appropriate like the moment after a funeral, when everyone has left and you're alone with the truth. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building with creaking hardwood floors and windows that overlooked a park. Children played there in the afternoons. That detail heard, but Ethan didn't let himself dwell on IT. This was temporary. Everything was temporary now. For the first week, he existed in a fog. He slept 14 hours a day, waking only to stare straight from the box and stare at the unfamiliar ceiling. It taken a leave of absence from work, citing a family emergency wasn't entirely a lie, which his phone stayed off. He knew Lauren would be calling, tichting, probably showing up at his office. Let her feel a fraction of the panic it felt reading that test result. On the 8th day, there was a knock at the door. Ethan froze. He found him already. He checked the piffle, heart pounding. Instead of Lauren's face, he saw an elderly woman holding a casserole dish. Margaret from 3B, she said when he opened the door. So you moving in. Figured you could say prepare meal. The kindness indeed something in him. He invited her in. Overheated pasta and awkward conversation. The story spilled out of him everything he'd been holding back. Margaret listened to it with judgment. Her wetted hands wrapped round a coffee mug. My husband did something similar, she said finally. Different details, same betrayal too. She introduced him to a support group at the community center. Ethan resisted at first. He wasn't the sharing feelings type, but loneliness has a way of breaking down walls. The group was smaller than he expected. 7 people in folding chairs, clutching styrofoam cups of coffee like life rafts. There was Thomas, Olivia, William. Stories different in detail, identical in pain. When IT was it storm, he kept IT brief. My wife cheated on a trip, got pregnant, tried to pass IT of has mine. I left. How do you feel? Asked the facilitator, Dr. Ellen Reeves. Ethan considered lying. Instead, he said, like I'm drowning but also like I can finally breathe. Heads did round the circle. They understood. We extended into months. Ethan attended every meeting. He began to notice patterns the gaslighting, the trick cluttered, the way betrayers positioned themselves as victims. He also noticed how many people got stuck, trapped in endless loopholes of what if. He refused that fate. He enrolled in an online course about trauma recovery, became certified as a peer counselor, created a website, New Horizons Support Network, emails power teen, men who discovered children urine biologically tears, women whose husbands had second families, people whose lives had been built on lies. Ethan answered every message personally, often late into the night. 6 months after he left, VHS phone rang. Is this Ethan? A woman asked. My name is Claire Morrison. I was on Lauren's trip, yet Hans' grip tightened. I have nothing to say to you two. Please, she said. Just listening. They met at a cafe. She was angry, Claire admitted. Drunk. Stupid. It was one night. I don't need details, Ethan said coldly. She's falling apart, Claire continued. Lost her job. The baby's father wants nothing to do with IT. She's lonely. Good, Ethan said, standing. Dat isn't her remouse matter. Sauri dat isn't onbreak trust, he replied. She made her choice. Evie made mine too. He walked through. Ethan didn't scream or rage or seek revenge. He built something instead. Something that mattered. And as New Horizons grew, he realized something that terrified and steadied him all at once. He wasn't running anymore. He was moving forward, learning to breathe without her. The first real sign that Ethan could do was no longer merely surviving but beginning to life came quietly, without ceremony. It was a Thursday evening. 3 months after it walked through from its marriage, and he realized that he hadn't thought about Lauren for nearly an entire hour. Not while making jeans, not while answering emails, not even while sitting in the familiar circle of folding chairs at the community center. The realization startled him more than any memory of her ever had. For a long time, she had been the axis round which everything turned off: anger, loss, betrayal. Even his resolve to rebuild had been shaped in opposition to her choices. But now, something had shifted. The abyssins no longer screamed. It hummed faintly in the background, like an old injury that no longer dictated every movement. That night, after the supergroup meeting ended and people filtered out into the dimly lit parking lot, Ethan lingered behind, sticking chairs with Dr. Ellen Reeves. You're different lately, the therapist observed casually. Ethan paused, considering. Different how? Less defensively, Dr. Reeves said. Less like you're bracing for impasse. Ethan nodded slowly. I think I finally stopped waiting for the next betrayal. That admission surprised him. 4 months, which his body had lived in a constant state of alertness, as if danger might materialize at any moment. Trust, once shattered, didn't reboot on its own. It had to be relearned carefully, intentionally, and painfully. The apartment began to feel less like a temporary shelter and more like a home. Ethan bought a real couch instead of sitting on folding chairs. He framed photographs from hikes taken alone on weekends, moments of quiet achievement. He adopted a routine morning runs, work hours reclaimed, evenings dedicated to responding to messages from people who want New Horizons in their darkest moments. The emails haunted him. Men who learned after decades that the children they loved urine biologically tears. Women who discovered secret families, secret depths, secret lives. People whose entire sense of reality had fractured overnight. Ethan responded to each one with never having platitudes. He didn't promise a healing. He promised honesty. You're not crazy. What you're feeling makes sense. You get to decide what happens next. New Horizons grew faster than he expected. The Thursday group became 2 groups. 10-3. Volunteers came forward, people who had survived and wanted to help others do the same. Ethan trained Taram personally. Your job isn't to fix you on, he told Taram. It's to all beside Taram until they remember who they were before someone convinced Taram they were dispossibility. Lonalini still came in waves. Some nights, Ethan lay ruig staring at the ceiling. How indeed BY phantom versions of the life it lost. Not Lauren Herzl, but the idea of her. The version he thought admitted. Those nights were dangerous. They tempted him with revisionist history. With thoughts like maybe it isn't all a lie. Maybe I have reacted. Maybe one mistake shouldn't erase everything. On those nights, he pulled out the paternity report. 0%. Not to punish himself, but to answer himself in reality. Boundaries. It learned errant acts of cruelty. They were acts of self-respect. 6 months after leaving, Ethan stood in front of a white board in a borrowed conference room, outlining each's most ambitious idea yet. A conference. 2 days. Workshops. Legal researchers. Therapists. Survivors. A place where people could stop feeling like anomalies and start feeling like a community. This is big, one volunteer said hesitantly. Are we ready? Ethan looked round the room at the faces of people who trusted him with their pain. You're not ready, he said uneasily. But neither were any of us when our lives blew up. We figured it out anyway. They secured a table room, speakers, sponsors. And on the first morning, as people filed in summer lawn, shoulders hunched with fresh wounds, others supported BY friends Ethan felt something close to awe. Pain he brought Taram here. But purpose would carry Taram forward. Then he saw her. Lauren stood in the doorway. 9 months pregnant. One hand braced against the wall, the other resting on her enormous belly. She looked small, somehow diminished. Dark circles hurried her eyes. Her clothes hung loosely, as if she'd lost weight everywhere except where the baby demanded space. For a moment, the room tilted. 11 months. 11 months since it walked out toward a backward glance. Security approached her before Ethan could move. Ma'am, do you have a registration? I need to speak to Ethan, Lauren said, voice trembling. The guard looked to him. Conference room C. Ethan said tightly. 5 minutes to. The room was small and windowless, smelling faintly of cleaning solution. Lauren entered slowly, like someone approaching a wild animal. Thank you for seeing me, she said. You have 3 minutes, Ethan replied. Then I call the police to. She lowered herself into a chair with visible effort. I'm not here to ask you to come back, she said quickly. I know that's impossible. I need help to. The word struck him like an insult. Help? He repeated. Did you need help when you were sleeping with a stranger? Or when you lied to my ways 4 weeks? I deserve it, she whispered. But this isn't about me. It's about the baby. Not my baby, Ethan said. Not my problem. Lauren swallowed hard. The father wants nothing to do with us. He told me to get an abortion. I lost my job. I'm about to lose the house. My parents won't help. She looked at him, desperately. You help people. I saw your website. The audacity installation is bred. You want me to rescue you, he said slowly. From consequences you earned. Tears spilled down her face. I made a terrible mistake, she said. But this baby didn't ask for any of it. Ethan turned to the window, staring at the people gathering outside the virus. Fighters. There are researchers, he said finally. Legal aid. Assistance programs. I have my assistant sent you a list. Daniel. Ethan. He corrected. And after today, you're done it. Shenadid, broken. Im Sauri, she whispered. Your apologies mean nothing to me, he replied. They never will. When she left, Ethan stood alone, breathing through the ache. G.R. Reeves repeated moments later. That was good, the therapist said. Ethan nodded. I stopped Mr. King, compression for self-satisfaction. The conference was a success. The standing ovation during H's keynote speech felt less like validation and more like responsibility. That night, Ethan updated the New Horizon website. He edited researches for ample and single printout. Not for Lauren, for the child. He also published a blog post anonymous about nothing when helping becomes enabling. It went viral. And in that moment, Ethan understood something profound, which is pain had become idea's purpose. But Lauren's pain was hers to carry. Boundaries are not cruelty. 2 years passed quietly. Not easily, but quietly. Ethan Calduro learned that time did not heal wounds on its own. Time merely created space. What filled that space resentment or resolve, bitterness or meaning was a choice made daily. New Horizons Super Network outgrew the small conference rooms and Bourota offices that had once held IT together. IT moved into a real space with frosted glass doors etched with its name. Volunteers rotated through scheduled shifts. A 24-hour crisis line and live. Legal partnerships formed. Therapists offered pro bono hours. Survivors became advocates. And Ethan became something he had never planned to be. A leader. He still didn't think of himself that way. In his mind, he was simply a man who had been shattered and refused to stay broken. But to the people who walked through those doors says how rude by betrayal, handshaking with the terror of starting over, he was proof that survival did not have to mean smallness. IT could mean ich pension. On a great Tuesday afternoon, which is assistant, Helen Brooks, knocked once and stepped into Idia's office. Your triathlon is here, she said. Volunteer orientation. Name appears to it. Send her into it. The woman who entered was younger than Ethan expected. Late 20s. Cautious says. Shoulders held too rigidly, as if bracing for impact. Ethan recognized the posture immediately. It was the stance of someone who had been blindsided and was still learning which parts of the word were safe. They shook hands and sat across from each other. Tell me what brings you to New Horizon, Ethan said gently. Naomi twisted her fingers together. My fiance cheated 2 months before our wedding, she said. With my sister, the words landed with her drama, heavy and vinyl. They're married now, she continued, expecting twins. Everyone keeps telling me to forgive, to move on, to be happy for them. Hore sharpened. I'm not to it. Ethan nodded slowly. You don't have to be, he said. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, especially when it's being set to silence your pain. Naomi exhaled, relief flooding her expression. I've been coming to the Thursday group, she said. It's the only place I don't feel crazy for still being angry. Anger. Ethan had learned to respect that word. Anger isn't the enemy. Suppressed anger was. Over the next hour, he walked Naomi through the training program. Boundaries. Ethics. Listening toward rescuing. Helping toward becoming someone else's safety net. You can't pour from an empty cup, he said firmly. Promise me you'll keep doing your own work too. I promise it. When she left, Ethan sat back in his chair, something warm settling in his chest. The cycle was continuing. Pain becoming purpose. Purpose becoming structure. That night, he found an email sitting on a pen in his inbox. Invitation to speak. National Conference on Family Betrayal and Recovery. They wanted him as a keynote speaker. He accepted immediately. Chicago greeted him with wind and steel and endless movement. The conference attended was with professional therapists, social workers, attorneys and survivors who wore their scars, openly or not at all. Ethan attended every session he could, absorbing new therapeutic frameworks, legal strategies, trauma research. On the final morning, he stood backstage reviewing, which is not theirs. G.R. Karen Whitlock, the conference organizer, approached with a careful expression. Here is something you should know, she said. Lauren Caldo registered for the sessions. The name landed like a dollar from another life. She didn't realize you were the keynote speaker until this morning. G.R. Whitlock continued. She's offered to live with you would make you uncomfortable too. Ethan inhaled slowly. No, he said. She can't state it. This isn't about Lauren. It's been for a long time. He walked onto the stage and faced 800 people. He told the truth. About betrayal. About the disorientation that followed. About the terror of realizing the life you thought you were living never existed. Betrayal that isn't just heard, he said, gripping the podium. It is how you see the word. Trust becomes thriving. Love becomes suspect. You question every memory wondering what was real and what was performance. The room was silent. But it is what we learned. Ethan continued. You can rebuild. Not the same life. That one is gone. But something new. Something stronger. Something that belongs entirely to you two. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, people lined up to speak with him, sharing stories, asking questions, thanking him for giving language to what they saw and articulate. As the crowd thinned, Ethan saw her. Lauren stood at the edge of the room, no longer pregnant. Her body lighter, but her face again beyond her years. She'll ten the last time it's in her, but Lauren. I won't take much of your time, she said when she approached. I just wanted you to know you were changed them while lived. Ethan studied her carefully, not for manipulation but for truth. Was you a child? He asked quietly. Lucas is too, she said. Butterful. Healthy? She hesitated. Being a single mother is harder than anything I imagined. But in managing. I work at a non-profit, now helping women in crisis. Good, Ethan said simply. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. Lauren continued. I just needed you to know that your message that accountability matters saved me from drowning in self-pity. She turned to leave. Lauren, Ethan said. She stopped. I hope you find peace, he said. The kind that comes from changing the behavior, not regret. Tears filled her eyes. I hope you find love again. After she left, dear Whitlock joined him. You okay? Ethan smiled genuinely. Yes, he said. I really am. That night, standing on edges at a balcony overlooking the city, Ethan understood something he hadn't before. Letting go didn't require forgiveness. It required release. Lauren was no longer the villain of each story. She was simply someone who had made choices and lived their with them. And he was free. What remains after betrayal? 2 years after Chicago, Ethan Childer's life bore little resemblance to the one he had fled in silence before dawn. The office he sat in now was real, not borrowed, not temporary. Frosty glass doors bore the edge towards New Horizons super network, catching the afternoon light in soft fragments. Beyond them, phones rang, printers hummed, and voices murmured with quiet urgency. This was the sound of something alive, something growing. Ethan leaned back in his chair and let himself absorb IT. Tented grey estates, legal partnerships offering pro bono representation, therapists donating hours every week, emergency funds for people escaping toxic relationships. He had built all of IT from the wreckage of one marriage. Helen Brooks knocked lightly and entered with her usual efficiency. Your calendars full through November, she said. Alpha Musset, Alfie Housestead. And you've been invited to keynote 3 more conferences. Ethan smiled. You make it work. She hesitated at the door. You've come a long way. So hit she. Everyone here hit. After Helen left, Ethan opened his laptop and scrolled through emails messages from strangers who felt familiar because pain hit away over a thin distance. I thought I was weak for leaving. Your work saved my life. I finally stopped blaming myself. He answered each one carefully, not with promises, with presence. A trias looked sharp. There was a knock. Come in. Naomi Pierce stepped inside, carrying a notebook and took office. Her posture was different, now still cautious, but grounded. Stronger. Aren't you went well? She said, hinging him a cup. The new volunteers are nervous. But good. There is a, Ethan replied. I means daycare too. She hesitated. Can I ask you something personal? He nodded. How long did it take you to stop hurting? Ethan considered the question. Outside his window, the city moved people crossing streets, leaving lives he would never know. I still shared sometimes, he said finally. But it's different. The pain was said to define me. Now it's like an old injury takes when the weather changes, but it doesn't stop me from moving. Naming a deed, absorbing that. That gives me hope. After she left, Ethan said quietly, hope, for a long time. That word had felt dangerous.